In a universe where power and technology dictate authority, a prestigious institution like Alpha Hybrid Academy stands as a sanctuary for the elite exceptional warriors from countless civilizations across the galaxies. Among the many, one human boy from Earth, a planet dismissed as insignificant and frail, forces everyone to ask, what defines the true worth of a being? Kieran possesses neither extraordinary strength nor advanced technology, but amidst the sneers and prejudice, he wields a weapon stronger than any, unyielding determination. This story is not just about a personal journey but about shattering boundaries imposed by ourselves and others. When the Nova Reactor fails, and the galaxy teeters on the edge of collapse, it is the one most underestimated who becomes the ultimate hope. What gave this small human the strength to stand tall among superior beings, and what made them re-evaluate their own perspectives? This is not just Kieran's story. It is humanity's story of a relentless flame that burns brightest where it is least expected. In a sprawling galaxy, Alpha Hybrid Academy is the only place where beings from hundreds of planets converge to train as elite warriors. Located on the neutral planet of Icarus Prime, the Academy is not only a symbol of intergalactic unity but also a proving ground where each creature's abilities are tested to their limits. Here, differences in species, culture, and technology are not obstacles but motivations for fierce competition in the name of planetary pride. When Kieran, a young man from Earth, set foot on the icy yet majestic surface of Icarus Prime, he was immediately overwhelmed by the monumental structures around him. Towering crystalline spires sparkled under the twin suns, suspended corridors held aloft by reverse gravity fields, and the bustling flow of students from countless alien races painted a picture of ceaseless motion. In this moment, Kieran had never felt smaller. He was ushered into the grand hall of the Academy, where the induction ceremony was held. A massive screen displayed scenes from every corner of the planet, showcasing the Academy's illustrious history and the legends who had graduated from its ranks. Amidst the air of excitement and anticipation, Kieran couldn't shake the feeling of being the target of numerous unfriendly stares. A deep voice rumbled behind him, "A human? Why waste a spot on such a weak species?" Turning around, Kieran found himself face to face with Zorak, a towering figure from the planet Dravik 7, home to a race renowned for their near-invincible regenerative abilities. Zorak, standing almost 2 meters taller than Kieran, seemed to absorb the surrounding light with his pale gray skin, and his glowing green eyes radiated disdain. Perhaps they wanted to see how long a human can last before being eliminated, Zorak continued, his booming laughter echoing through the hall, drawing chuckles from a few other students nearby. Kieran clenched his fists but said nothing. He knew that giving in to anger would only reinforce their stereotypes about humans. The first day at the Academy was anything but easy. After the ceremony, students were divided into smaller groups to familiarize themselves with their new environment. While others easily communicated using advanced translation devices, Kieran quickly realized that the barrier wasn't language but attitude. He was often ignored in conversations, and when he introduced himself, he was met with indifferent gazes or mocking smiles. When the first training session began, the students were tasked with a physical trial. A holographic gate revealed a simulated environment of treacherous terrain, sharp rock formations, fissures filled with bubbling magma, and a stormy sky crackling with electromagnetic energy. Their mission was to navigate the hazardous terrain within a set time limit. The other beings displayed their unique talents, some soared over chasms with massive wings, others used nanotech to construct bridges over lava, and still others, like Zorak, simply leapt across with little concern for injuries. Lacking advanced tech or supernatural abilities, Kieran had to rely solely on his physical endurance and resourcefulness. As he pushed forward, Zorak's mocking laughter rang out repeatedly. "Keep going, human, don't get buried too soon." But instead of reacting, Kieran focused on each step, applying every skill he had learned on Earth, from climbing rugged cliffs to navigating unstable ground. When he finally reached the finish line, Kieran was far behind the others. Zorak was waiting there, arms crossed, casting him a derisive look. "I'm surprised you're still alive, human," he sneered. Kieran didn't reply, standing tall and meeting Zorak's gaze. For a brief moment, something in Kieran's unwavering eyes made Zorak pause. As the first day ended, Kieran sat alone in the small room assigned to him. Through the window, he gazed at the glittering expanse of the galaxy, a sight he had only dreamed of back on Earth. He knew the road ahead would be grueling. But in that moment, he realized he hadn't come here to please Zorak or anyone else. He had come to prove that humanity, despite its lack of supernatural powers, could overcome any challenge through intelligence, patience, and sheer determination. For Kieran, this wasn't just training, it was an opportunity to reshape how the galaxy viewed humanity. And he vowed not to let anyone, not even Zorak, stand in his way. The Alpha Hybrid Academy wasn't a place for the weak. It was an arena where species from across the galaxy showcased their strength and unique abilities, from manipulating gravity and adapting to extreme environments to reflexes as fast as light. In this environment, Kieran, an ordinary human from Earth, seemed like an anomaly, a misplaced piece in the grand mosaic of extraordinary beings. Kieran's first training session began with the gravity wall climb, a towering structure over 20 meters tall, covered in constantly shifting gravitational fields. For beings like Arvik from the planet Eltera, whose limbs could stretch and adhere to any surface, or Lyra, a creature with teleportation abilities, this test was little more than a minor challenge. But for Kieran, it was a grueling trial. When the gravity abruptly reversed, Kieran lost his grip and fell hard onto the ground. Laughter erupted from the crowd, led by Zorak. "Maybe he should have brought a ladder." Zorak sneered, his tone dripping with mockery. Kieran didn't respond, he simply stood back up and tried again. This time, he carefully observed the gravitational shifts, waiting for those fleeting moments when the pull stabilized enough for him to advance. Though it took him much longer than the others, Kieran eventually reached the top, sweat streaming down his face but with a determined glint in his eyes. The challenges that followed were no easier. In the high-pressure combat test designed to simulate the crushing atmosphere of Titan, where air pressure could pulverize most physical forms, beings with regenerative powers like Zorak or Grekus pressure-resistant hide breezed through effortlessly. But Kieran, with his weaker human physique, felt as though 1,000 tons were pressing on his chest. He staggered and collapsed before making it halfway. One of the instructors, a crystalline-eyed creature radiating light, turned to a colleague and spoke loudly enough for Kieran to hear, "I don't see why humans were admitted into this program. Perhaps we need to re-evaluate our selection criteria." The mockery and doubts from both his peers and instructors didn't deter Kieran. Each failure wasn't a setback for him but an opportunity to learn. Instead of wallowing in frustration, he meticulously observed how others overcame the tests. He realized they didn't solely rely on their inherent abilities but also had strategies tailored to their strengths. For Kieran, lacking supernatural powers meant he had to rely on the one thing he had, his intelligence and creativity. In the next test, the task was to navigate a light maze protected by laser traps. Other species with heightened reflexes or the ability to see through objects maneuvered with ease, avoiding the beams and finding the correct path swiftly. Instead of rushing forward, Kieran paused to analyze the patterns of the laser beams. He noticed they operated on a predictable cycle, allowing him to time his movements perfectly. Using his calculated approach, he cleared the maze not the fastest, but with a respectable time. For the first time, the supervising instructor gave an approving nod, acknowledging Kieran's resourcefulness. Kieran's persistence began to draw attention not because he excelled, but because he never gave up. Even when Zorik deliberately tripped him during sparring drills, Kieran simply got back up without complaint. This unyielding attitude began to earn him a modicum of respect from some of the other students who had initially dismissed him. But it was during a group exercise that Kieran truly demonstrated his worth. The objective was to construct a bridge across a chasm while under continuous assault from automated drones. The other species immediately began arguing, each convinced their ability was the most optimal solution. Instead of joining the chaos, Kieran silently observed and formulated a plan. He proposed a strategy that utilized everyone's strengths. Lyra would teleport anchor points into place, Arvik would use his extendable limbs to secure the bridge segments, and Greca would shield the team from drone attacks. At first, his suggestions were ignored. But as other plans failed, the group reluctantly followed his lead. Together, they completed the mission with enough time to spare. He doesn't have powers, but he clearly knows how to use his brain, one teammate remarked afterward. As the day's training came to an end, Kieran sat alone, gazing at the star-filled sky through his dormitory window. He wasn't the strongest, and he knew he never would be. But his strength didn't lie in muscles or advanced technology. It lay in his unwavering determination and the ability to adapt. More importantly, he realized that he didn't need to become like them to prove his worth. He only needed to be himself, a human being with an indomitable will and an unrelenting drive to rise above every challenge. Ortha 7 was a harsh, frozen planet, with a sky perpetually bathed in the pale glow of solar radiation. The average temperature was so low that most electronic devices struggled to function, and solar storms had the power to disrupt any technological system. It was here that the Alpha Hybrid Academy held its field training, testing the students' ability to survive and adapt to the most extreme environmental conditions. This mission seemed simple in theory. Teams were tasked with building a shelter strong enough to withstand a solar storm predicted to strike in 3 hours. However, in practice, the challenge was much more complicated. Most of the creatures on Kieran's team were used to relying on advanced technology from their home planets. From molecular restructuring devices to plasma shielding walls, everything depended on a stable power source. But on Ortha 7, the powerful magnetic field had rendered most of these devices useless. As soon as they landed on the icy surface, Kieran's team, which included Zorik and Lyra, quickly split into two factions. One group believed they should try to repair their advanced technology to create shelter, while the other, led by Lyra, suggested digging a deep hole in the ice and waiting out the storm. Both plans had flaws. The advanced technology could not function properly in these conditions, and digging through the ice was not only time-consuming but also left them exposed to the strong radiation. Kieran quietly observed his team as they argued. His gaze turned to the horizon, where the shimmering aurora borealis was starting to flicker unpredictably, a sign that the solar storm was approaching. "We don't have time to argue," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I have an idea, but we need everyone to cooperate." The group fell silent, a few skeptical looks directed at Kieran. Zorik smirked. "What's your next brilliant plan, weak human?" he mocked. But Kieran didn't mind the taunt. He quickly explained his idea. "Instead of relying on complex technology or wasting time digging through the ice, we'll build a simple but effective structure using the materials around us," Kieran said, gesturing toward the nearby ice and rocks. Solar radiation can't penetrate natural magnetic materials. If we stack these iron-rich stones into an arch, it will create a natural shield against the storm. At first, Kieran's idea was met with resistance. Zorik immediately dismissed it. That's primitive construction from thousands of years ago. We're advanced beings, we don't need to go back to the Stone Age. But Lyra, who had witnessed Kieran's ingenuity in previous tests, spoke up in support. We don't have a better option. If this plan fails, at least we tried. With reluctant agreement from the team, Kieran got to work. He guided everyone to select the largest rocks with the highest iron content and used blocks of ice to seal and reinforce the gaps. He explained that when compressed, ice could serve as an effective insulator and electrical insulator, enhancing their protection. While the team worked, Kieran didn't just give orders, he participated in every detail. Even with his hands frozen stiff with cold, he persevered in moving each stone into place. His effort and determination gradually spread to others, with even the most skeptical members starting to work seriously. Even Zorik, though silent, quietly joined in the construction of the structure. With less than 30 minutes left before the storm hit, the shelter was finally complete. It was a simple, sturdy stone arch with thick layers of compressed ice covering the outside. As the first bright beams of the storm lit up the sky, the team quickly took shelter inside. The solar storm swept across Ortha 7 like an invisible tsunami. The sky was torn apart by flashing beams, and the ground trembled with powerful shock waves. While other teams faced the collapse of their high-tech shelters, Kieran's team remained safe inside the stone and ice arch. Kieran could feel the tension in the air ease as everyone realized their plan had worked. When the storm subsided, Kieran's team emerged and saw that they were one of the few teams still intact. The professors, observing from afar, couldn't hide their surprise. One of them, a tall being with reflective skin, nodded in approval. Creative and practical. That's the spirit we look for in galactic warriors. Though Zorik remained silent, the contempt in his eyes had faded when he looked at Kieran. Lyra, the first to trust him, smiled softly. You're not just smart, Kieran. You've shown us that sometimes simplicity is the best solution. Kieran merely shrugged, his gaze drifting back to the horizon. He knew this was just a small step in his journey, but it was the first step that proved even the toughest limits could be overcome with willpower and creativity. In a vast galaxy, humanity might not be the strongest, but they would never be the weakest. The atmosphere at the Alpha Hybrid Academy that day was heavier than ever before. The Nova Reactor, the machine powering the entire academy, had suddenly malfunctioned. This was not just a routine technical failure, it was a potential disaster. The Nova Reactor not only provided energy, but it also maintained the life support systems, including environmental shields, space pressure, and protection against cosmic radiation. If it collapsed, the entire student and faculty population, no matter their species, would be put into a deadly situation. Alarm bells echoed through the hallways, and red lights flashed in a frantic rhythm, like the very heartbeat of the academy itself. Creatures of various species gathered at designated safe zones, following the emergency protocols, but the atmosphere was nothing short of chaotic. Professors and specialized engineers hurried to the reactor's central chamber, only to quickly realize that the quantum technology powering the reactor had completely shut down. In one corner of the safety zone, Kieran stood among the panicked crowd. Lyra and Zorik were present as well, each reacting in their own way. Lyra was contemplative, seemingly processing the situation, while Zorik muttered incessantly, "This is why I don't trust your human machines. If this were my planet's technology, everything would be sorted by now. But Kieran paid no attention to his complaints. He knew time was running out, and all hope now depended on immediate action. He was not a specialized engineer, but something deep within him told him that the solution lay in the simplest principles. A plan started to take shape in Kieran's mind. "We can't just stand here and wait to die," Kieran spoke up, his voice cutting through the tense air. "If high-tech isn't working, we need to rely on ourselves and use whatever we have to control the situation." Zorak burst out laughing. "You're going to fix the Nova Reactor with a hammer and wrench? Ridiculous." But Kieran didn't care. He looked at the others and continued, "The Nova Reactor might be advanced, but it still operates on basic principles of physics. We don't need to fully restore the system, just stop it from exploding and buy time for the professional engineers to fix it." Lyra nodded in agreement. "What's your plan, Kieran?" "First, we need to temporarily reduce the pressure in the reactor core by cutting the overloaded energy flow," Kieran explained. "I need everyone's help. Each of our species has a unique ability. If we combine our strengths, we can perform a miracle." He quickly assigned tasks. Lyra, with her hypersensitive vision, was tasked with monitoring the leaking energy flows and pinpointing the exact areas of danger. Zorak, though reluctant, was instructed to use his body regeneration ability to reach areas where radiation levels were too high for others. Other creatures were assigned roles based on their abilities. A Mechran, with arms made of ultra-durable alloy, would move damaged equipment, while a group of fluid species, with their liquid-like bodies, would squeeze into tight spaces to inspect the system from the inside. Kieran's part was the heart of the plan. He would use basic tools to temporarily disconnect the primary energy conduits, reducing the pressure in the reactor core. This was a task requiring precise calculations and absolute calm, because a single mistake could cause the entire system to collapse. Minutes passed one by one. While everyone worked according to the plan, Kieran sat in the reactor's control center, his eyes glued to the old energy maps and the basic tools in his hands. He wrote calculations on a piece of paper, using fundamental but precise physics knowledge to determine the maximum pressure the conduits could withstand. The tension peaked when Zorak, during one of his radiation exposure missions, was severely injured and had to retreat. But with his regeneration ability, he quickly recovered and returned to continue the task. Despite his usual disdain for Kieran, Zorak could not deny the leadership Kieran displayed in this crisis. Finally, after more than an hour of relentless work, Kieran completed the calculations and took the final step, cutting off the main energy conduit. He carefully detached each bolt, adjusted each valve, and finally flipped the disconnect switch. A loud screech echoed through the chamber, followed by a deadly silence. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what would happen. Then, the system began to stabilize. The alarm screens went dark, and the energy readings from the Nova Reactor core started to fall to safe levels. The team sighed in relief. A Mechran, who typically communicated only through light signals, emitted a series of flashing lights that conveyed admiration. Zorak, though still silent, gave Kieran a subtle nod, a small but meaningful gesture. When the professional engineers arrived to take over, they were astonished by the solution that Kieran and his team had implemented. One of the professors, who had previously been skeptical of human capabilities, stepped forward and said, "You not only saved us, but you also proved an important point. No matter how advanced technology is, it can never replace intelligence and courage." Kieran merely smiled modestly. He knew this was only one of many challenges ahead, but it had proven something significant. Despite being underestimated, humanity could push past any limit when facing adversity. In resilience and creativity, he believed the future didn't just belong to technology but to individuals who knew how to harness their true power. The atmosphere at Alpha Hybrid Academy had changed significantly after the Nova Reactor incident. The mocking glances and derisive comments that once followed Kieran had been replaced with quiet respect, though not everyone openly acknowledged it. Kieran, once dismissed for his frail body and lack of supernatural abilities, was now remembered as a hero, someone who proved that humanity didn't need extraordinary strength to survive in a universe full of challenges. This change was not only evident in the glances and words exchanged but also in the way other creatures began to treat Kieran. During subsequent training sessions, teammates who had once avoided him now readily cooperated. Lyra, Kieran's most loyal companion, could not hide her pride. She often reminded him that he had done what few could: change the prejudices of an entire community. However, not everything became easier. Some creatures, like Zorak, still harbored skepticism, believing Kieran's success was simply due to luck. "He just happened to be in the right place at the right time," Zorak muttered to a few of his kind. "If it were any other situation, humans wouldn't have been able to do anything." These words sometimes reached Kieran's ears, but instead of reacting, he simply smiled. He knew that trust couldn't be changed by a single event. It had to be built over time through actions. An opportunity to prove this came quickly in a special test organized by the Academy. It was a 3-day endurance challenge, designed to push students to their limits both physically and mentally. The teams had to complete a series of tasks including survival in harsh environments, combat against simulated robots, and solving complex tactical puzzles. More importantly, the competition wasn't just about individual capability, it also measured teamwork. Kieran was assigned to a mixed team with Lyra, Zorak, and 2 other creatures, Grix, a mechanical species with high-speed data analysis abilities, and Volto, a creature with the power to manipulate magnetic fields, but one easily distracted. Their team was considered unbalanced, as most other teams were formed based on similar abilities. From the start, Zorak showed his displeasure. "Great, now we have a human from Earth and a dreamer. We're definitely going to lose." The first challenge took place on the surface of a desert planet, where daytime temperatures could melt metal, and nighttime cold could freeze anything. Teams had to build a shelter strong enough to withstand these harsh conditions, with resources in short supply. Other teams quickly used advanced technology or their special powers to create grand structures. Kieran's team, meanwhile, was facing internal conflict. Zorak wanted to use all the materials to create a large structure, while Grix insisted that a smaller, more solid shelter would be more effective. Kieran, with his calm and logical approach, proposed a compromise: they would build a compact shelter that could expand as needed. This approach not only saved resources but also allowed them to finish ahead of schedule, while other teams struggled with their designs. The second challenge involved fighting a team of simulated robots in a destroyed urban environment. This was the test Zorak had been eagerly awaiting, as he believed his strength would dominate. However, the team quickly realized that the robots were programmed to respond in unpredictable ways, not simply through brute force. They attacked in groups, using surrounding terrain to trap their opponents. Kieran, who had studied the simulation scenarios in advance, suggested an unexpected strategy: instead of facing them head-on, they would use the terrain to lure the robots into traps. With the cooperation of the entire team, the plan succeeded. Zorak, though reluctant, had to admit that Kieran's intellect had saved them from failure. The final challenge, and the toughest one, involved solving a series of tactical puzzles in an underwater maze. Each mistake not only cost them points but also triggered dangerous traps that threatened the safety of the team. This was where Kieran truly shined. He used Grix's analytical abilities to collect data, combined with Volto's skills to deactivate magnetic traps, and worked with Lyra to find a way out of the maze. Zorak, though not vocal, played an important role by using his physical strength to clear paths when needed. In the end, they were the first team to complete the challenge, exceeding all expectations. When the competition ended, the instructors announced Kieran's team as the winners, not just because they completed the tasks but also for their outstanding teamwork and creativity. The other teammates looked at Kieran in a new light. Even Zorak couldn't deny that Kieran had become the unofficial leader of the team, not through strength, but through his ability to connect and guide everyone. Kieran knew that this victory wasn't just a title. It was a testament to the true strength of humanity, creative minds, patience, and the ability to overcome prejudice. That spirit not only helped him conquer the challenges but also spread to other creatures at the Academy. In a universe where power was often measured by physical strength or technology, Kieran had proven that humanity's perseverance and determination were an unquenchable flame. The ceremony took place in the central hall of Alpha Hybrid Academy, where the light from hundreds of floating energy crystals illuminated the space, creating a breathtaking scene resembling a starry sky. Students and faculty from every corner of the galaxy gathered to witness this rare event. The Academy was not just a place of training, it was also a cultural exchange hub between species. And today, the ceremony was not just to honor one individual, but to mark a pivotal moment in history. As Kieran stepped onto the stage, applause rang out across the auditorium. But it wasn't just ordinary applause, it was a sign of respect from those who had once looked down on him. Standing at the podium, Kieran scanned the audience. He saw Lyra smiling proudly, Grix nodding solemnly, and even Zorak, the harshest critic, reluctantly clapping. The Academy director, a luminous being named Netherian, ascended the podium and presented Kieran with the emblem of the title, the Flame of Perseverance. It was a glowing crystal shaped like a flame, crafted from the core energy of ancient planets. As the crystal touched Kieran's hand, it emitted a warm light, as if it contained the power of millions of small flames. But for Kieran, this was not the end. He knew this was only the beginning of a new journey. The ceremony concluded in joyous celebration, but within Kieran's heart, bigger questions began to form. What lies ahead for me out there? What role will humanity play in the future of this universe? In the days following the ceremony, Kieran spent a lot of time in the Academy's library, where the most ancient and advanced knowledge was kept. He researched the history of wars between the galaxy's species, the fragile peace treaties, and the looming threats hidden in the shadows. One thing was clear: the current peace couldn't last if species continued to be divided by suspicion and prejudice. One day, Lyra came to find Kieran, bringing important news. "Kieran, Director Netherian wants to see you," she said, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. Kieran felt slightly surprised, but without hesitation, he followed her. In Netherian's office, a space surrounded by 3D holograms simulating moving galaxies, the director was waiting. "Kieran," Netherian said, their voice resonating like a melody. "Alpha Hybrid Academy is not just a training ground. We are also part of the Galactic Council, a secret organization established to maintain balance in the universe. And we need you." Kieran was taken aback. "I'm just a student." "Why me?" "Because you are human," Netherian replied. "You've proven that humanity's strength lies not in technology or physical power, but in perseverance and adaptability. The Council believes you can serve as a bridge between species, helping them see the value in one another. These words made Kieran pause and reflect. He understood that this was not an easy task. The universe was full of contradictions, species that were once allies now turned their backs on each other, regions of space torn apart by greed and power. But if there was a chance to make a difference, he couldn't refuse. Kieran accepted the offer, and immediately, his first mission was assigned, to mediate a conflict on the planet Myrax 12, where two ancient species were fighting over rare resources. It was a dangerous mission, as neither side trusted outsiders. But with humanity's spirit and the help of his new friends, Kieran believed he could succeed. Thus, Kieran's journey began. From a student once dismissed by others, he had become a symbol of hope and unity in a chaotic universe. And as he boarded the ship preparing to leave the academy, carrying the title The Flame of Perseverance, Kieran knew that this flame was not just a symbol for him, but for anyone who believed in their power to change. That flame would continue to burn brightly, not just on Earth, but across the stars. As Kieran left Alpha Hybrid Academy, the glowing crystal The Flame of Perseverance in his hand seemed to come alive, reflecting the light from millions of stars. It was not just a symbol of success, but a reminder that strength wasn't always measured by muscle or technology. Sometimes, it was the story of patience, courage, and the ability to unite despite seemingly irreconcilable differences. Kieran stepped onto his ship, feeling for the first time the weight of responsibility. The words of Director Netherian still echoed in his mind, "You carry not just your title, but the hope of the entire galaxy. Be the bridge, be the guiding flame." Outside the ship's window, the universe stretched out, its twinkling stars like an endless map. He knew that ahead lay greater challenges, distant regions of space with even deeper conflicts. But he also knew that as long as the flame in his heart burned, he would never back down. As the ship accelerated, a voice came through the comm system, "Kieran, there's an emergency signal from Myrax 12. We need you." He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then opened them to gaze toward the light ahead. "Let's begin the new journey," he said, his voice firm yet warm. The universe, in all its grandeur and chaos, now had another flame that couldn't be extinguished, a human carrying hope, change, and unity. Kieran's story had come to a close, but his journey was just beginning.